Welcome to Prime Life. We call it Retirement 2.0. Leave each episode with tips and new ideas to help you navigate retirement in our new age. It's your time. Make it count.
This podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not intended as medical, investment, or financial advice. We do not sponsor or endorse any of the individuals, companies, products, or services featured on this podcast. Any statements or opinions expressed are of the individual who makes them. We hope you enjoy the episode.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Prime Life podcast. We are excited to be here today with our guest, but let's start with our hosts. Joseph, how are you?
I am great, energized, ready
Fantastic.
to go.
Barry, how are you doing? And if you would please introduce our guest after you give your daily update.
I will. I certainly will. I'm hunky-dory. I don't know where I came up with that. It was from a yesteryear life when I was a kid. I don't know. Call me crazy. But yes, thank you, Laura. And great to see you, Joseph. I'm delighted to be able to introduce our guest. Her name is Kathleen Quinn. She's the president of K Inspired LLC and an inventor of the mobility towel. She's much more than that, though, and she'll tell you about that in a few minutes. She's a patented inventor of two products, and the inspiration for both products was her mom. Kathleen, you're a serial inventor, which I love, and you're much more than that, which you're going to share with us. So tell us a little bit about yourself and why you've created a couple of cool products.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be on Prime Life. So, by trade, I'm a higher ed professional, having served at universities for over 35 years, and have loved that experience and walking a journey with students as they're finding themselves in their collegiate experience. And then I've had an experience with my mom, both my mom and dad, who've had some health issues, and especially my mom, who suffered from rheumatoid arthritis and had numerous surgeries and ailments and things like that. And just watching her navigate her space and figuring things out. She had hip surgery, and because of her arthritis, had difficulty in addition to the hip surgery from her recovery. And my first invention came after she asked me one night if I would shave her legs. And again, the theme for me is I would do anything that my mom needed. But I'm a very private person, and so I couldn't imagine having to ask somebody else to do something so private for me. So I wanted to find a way for her to do it herself. It was an evening conversation we had. And so this was going to be the next day. And that night I was up thinking, how can she do this for herself? And so I got up the next day and I got a yardstick and I taped a razor to the end of it. And I'm like, Mom, let's try this. And of course it was a great idea in theory, but didn't work because it didn't have any angle to it or anything like that. But in that trial and error, I came up with a telescopic handle with an adjustable razor and little soap dispenser that you added on the end, and had that prototyped and everything, and patented, but never was able to bring it to market because of costs. Fast forward a number of years later, and she had hip revision surgery, which you have more limitations in terms of what you can do and everything. And she was finally home and had showered and asked if I would help her dry her off after she got out of the shower. And again, I'd do anything in the world to help my mom, but couldn't imagine somebody having to do that for me. So again, got to work thinking about ways that she could do it for herself. And so I came up with what is now mobility towel. It's a lightly weighted bath towel with weights on either corner of the bottom portion of the towel, and then handles at the midway point of the towel so that she could be seated, drape the towel over her legs, the weight help wrap it around the legs, and she could pull it up and it stayed tight to the skin to dry her legs and her back. And so through her use of it and my my very primitive prototypes, was able to really kind of hone it from there and get some feedback and make it to what it is today. So that's my passion, was just always tinkering and finding ways. We don't know what to be grateful for until something's taken away. And there's so many things that I realized I took for granted every day until I had something or I watched her. You think about things as simple as, I'm waving to you, this way. Well, her wrists were fused, so she couldn't bend her wrists. So there were some times where she'd reach into a drawer, and, when drawers are stuffed, sometimes they get stuck and you can maneuver in and all that. Well, because her wrist didn't bend, she wasn't able to do that. And so just really watching how she did things and how she navigated really prompted me to look at things differently and try to find a way to adapt some things and create new things so that she was able to do for herself. So she really has been the inspiration for everything that I've done, and now everything that I continue to do with Mobility Towel, and doing it in her spirit, if you will, and trying to help continue her legacy.
Oh, I love that. And on Prime Life, we hear a lot from individuals who are bringing things to market or having conversations or making action and taking action in the name of loved ones. And it's experiences that they've either been through themselves or those around them. So this is yet another example of, it's a beautiful story of a journey and realities that could be difficult, but you've taken that on and you've created something to not only help your mother, but to help many other people. My mind goes a little bit back to your background on the education side, and this is just a curiosity question, if you will. But as an educator and as somebody who works hard to help people around them, move forward in various ways, do you think that piece of you helped with your creation, your innovation, your iteration? It seems as though that you've had to go through a lot of different testing trials, iteratives of these products that you mentioned. Is that part of who you are and who your spirit is?
Yes, very much so. I'm very, very curious and very interested. And again, I'm going to go back to my mom because of the influence, and I think so much of my foundation and what I believe and how I navigate the world comes from her influence. And she used to always say, everybody has a story. We just need to take time to listen. And that's how I approach, the students. I tell people it's a privilege to do what I do in higher ed and to walk a journey with students when they're sometimes at their most vulnerable. I get to share experiences with them when they're at their best and when they're at their worst. And it's not what we do, but how we do it that makes the difference. And so I think the conversations that I've had with faculty, staff, and students, there's something to be learned in every conversation. And so there are takeaways in all of that when I hear experiences that students are talking about and dealing even with their families or roommates or things like that. It's all connected in some way if you take the time to really think about it and reflect on what's really at the heart of the matter. So very much it has influenced and is a part of my professional and interests all are intertwined.
So first, congratulations on your inventions and your accomplishments to date. The old saying, as you were talking, necessity is the mother of invention hit my mind. In your case, your mother was the mother of invention.
Right.
So, which, as Laura said, similar to a lot of other folks who we've had on the show, a parent or a loved one was the thing that triggered them to do whatever it is they were doing. I'm a marketing guy, and by nature, I'm just curious about how you have taken this product to market. Like, what's been that journey? What are the trials and tribulations? How's that been for you? I mean, it's very different than education.
Very different.
And we'll get that answer after a brief word from our commercial sponsors.
NASA is always working harder to be your carrier of choice. We offer insurance products that can help you meet your retirement goals, such as protecting your savings, securing lifetime income, or paying for healthcare costs. We're dedicated to providing best-in-class service and are keeping things simple, and we'll have your back. We have around 400,000 policyholders and contract holders and have been doing this for a long time, 170 years, but we remain humble enough to always try to improve. For more information, visit nfg.com. Nassau Insurance products are issued by Nassau Life and Annuity Company of Hartford, Connecticut, Nassau Life Insurance Company, East Greenbush, New York, or Nassau Life Insurance Company of Kansas, Overland Park, Kansas. Subsidiaries of Nassau Financial Group. Products are not available in all areas. Policyholder counts are for all Nassau companies as of September 30th, 2022, and are subject to change.
Coverite is the first digital concierge health insurance platform focused on Medicare. Their mission is to make Medicare more transparent and accessible for America's 60 million Medicare beneficiaries. By simplifying a traditionally confusing and complex decision, Coverite delivers a simple, seamless, and hassle-free plan selection and enrollment experience. Try the Coverite platform and see for yourself why they've been referred to as the TurboTax for Medicare. Visit coverite.com/podcast to learn more.
Yeah, it's been a challenge. At first, I thought it'd be pretty easy. You know, it's a product in my mind that should be in every house. You don't know you need it until you need it. And when you need it yesterday, not 3 days from now. But what I found, I was surprised at a couple things I found in trying to get out. I needed to get out first in front of people who didn't know me or who I didn't feel would just tell me what they think I needed to hear. It's nice to share with family and friends, and some of them are going to be brutally honest, but most people are going to say, oh, it's a great idea. They know my mom. They know she could use it, that type of thing. So in St. Louis, craft fairs are a big thing. And so I decided that I would participate in a couple of craft fairs. There were more Christmas craft fairs, not necessarily to see how many I could sell, but to get feedback. And there were a lot of surprises. I shouldn't say a lot, but several surprises of one, an attitude I didn't know I needed to overcome. And that was a lot of people would come up and they were intrigued. They've never seen anything like it. What is it? And I'd explain. And they'd say, oh, that's a great idea. I don't need it yet. And there was resistance to admit to needing an adaptive aid. So that was one thing that was a good lesson for me. The other is, again, I developed it for my mom. And so I wanted to have as many conversations with people as I could. And I found that the market is much, I shouldn't say the market is much broader. The end users, the ailments that the end users had, whether it's permanent or temporary, was much greater than I had originally anticipated. There were people who came up, and I had one woman who came up and she thought, you know, it was a wonderful product, and she was in tears and said, my grandmother could have used this. She had open heart surgery. And you don't think about, I never thought about open heart surgery and someone's chest being open and having to bend over to dry themselves. With Mobility Towel, you don't have to bend. You can just pull up and you can do it yourself. Neuropathy, multiple sclerosis, cerebral palsy. There were just so many different things that people were coming up and saying, oh, I could have used this, that it really broadened my horizons. And then there were some that's like, oh, what's this for? And I wanted to say you're privileged because you don't know. But it also helps, again, that you learn from every conversation, whether it was positive or negative. It helps you understand where people are coming from to help navigate how you want to tell your story about the towel.
Before Mary asks her question, I'll just do a little advertisement for you, because on your website, you have a little graphic with a lot of these use cases. And when I was preparing for this, I was like, oh, this is, interesting. And then I was like, oh, there's all these other use cases. So I agree with you. Most people don't realize how many different case situations you may need this.
It was interesting that one of the very first times I was before I had prototype. It was before anything, but I was going to a meeting with several people, and it was me and the guy who was going to help me develop my prototype, and then three men. So I was the only woman in a room of three men, and one of the men was he had a nursing home, but he was also a MMF wrestler, I think they call it. So he was a big burly guy, and there were three other guys. One was president, and the other guy was a salesperson. And so I'm sitting in there, and you want to read a room. You want to take, look at the eyes and see what people are saying. And the one guy sitting across from me, I could not read him at all. And he's sitting there, and he said, "This is brilliant." And he said, I had rotator cuff surgery. He was a former, his dad was a professional baseball player. He had rotator cuff surgery. He said, I could have used it. I couldn't dry my own back. And again, that was another ailment that I had not even considered at the time.
So, Kathleen, you've shared a few anecdotes about the different uses. I'd like to dig a little bit deeper. Do you have any stories of individuals who have used your product that have helped them? Do you want to share one or two?
Yeah.
Again, whatever, however you feel comfortable, because I think it would be interesting to know, because you've also stated, and I can completely understand, like, oh, that would have been good for, someone they know, or I don't need it yet. But I would love for our audience to hear, a story or two of someone that's used your product and how it's, helped them.
Yeah. So one of the first gentlemen who ended up being one of my go-to people when I was looking at, do I need to change the weight of the towel? Is this towel the right towel? And I ended up sending all samples to him. So he had a stroke, but had use of one arm. And prior to mobility towel, he would get out of the shower and take a towel and lay down in bed and kind of shimmy his back dry. With mobility towel, he could stand there after he got out of the shower with one arm, drape the towel over his back. The weights keep the towel tight to the skin, and just raise his good arm up, and it would dry his back. He doesn't use anything else but mobility towel now. So that's one story that's fun. Another one is a woman who actually had shoulder surgery, and she used the towel as well for her back. And she had said that it kept her, she was not married, didn't have anybody else at home, and was, deciding whether she needed to go to rehab or whether she could take care of herself at home. And she said because of the towel, she felt like she could take care of herself at home. And so those are two highlights for me. And I guess another one is another person who has arthritis who uses it now all the time as well. And she was saying people don't realize the effort that it takes to take a shower and to dry yourself, that you're just exhausted after that. And with mobility towel, that she didn't have to put the effort in to drying herself and all that. And it just made a difference in just how her whole day started. And I think the final thing I would say is, for some, we think about, when I get up in the morning, if I want to change my routine and do something in the morning and then shower, I can do that because I don't need anybody else to help me. When my mom first needed, assistance, she had to wait till I was available, and it was on my time and not her time. And that's the thing now, is I've heard from a few people that it's just nice. Number one, the caregiver gets time, they don't have to worry, but they can do it when they want to do it, not waiting on anybody else. And that freedom and independence is, in the MasterCard commercial or whatever it is, it's just priceless.
I love that. And it's so true, right? And it's interesting when you think about it, the product serves those in need, but you're right. A lot of the caregiving that we hear about here on the show, it's a lot of time on both sides right? Both individuals or multiple individuals are working together to provide this care, and the independence that this provides is just, it's amazing, right? So
Yeah.
dare I ask, do you have something else that you're working on? I mean, you talked about, the razor concept, which love that idea, and mobility towel, absolutely love that. And again, as Joseph mentioned, it's on the website. There's multiple uses. One of those was late term pregnancy. I can tell you from I have two wonderful children, and this towel would have been so helpful. months 7, 7 and beyond, you're there and you're like, well, we're gonna do the best we can today, looking like a happy person. So there's so much here that this solves. Are you working on your next? Not saying you have to, but is there something else in the works?
It's interesting because I've just been I have an aunt who I'm helping care for who has dementia. And just this last month has been an incredibly difficult month in terms of deciding that it's reached a point where we have done everything we can, that it's not a sustainable model to continue caring for her at home. And so we've had to put her, find a community for her, which is tougher than I've ever imagined. And so I think about that, and I think about some of the networks that I've been involved in. I don't have another product in mind right now, as much as it is supporting. I think there's a lot out there that we don't know about, and that people, I'm a small business. I'm not funded by a lot of people. So to get out there and do the marketing and do all that, it's word of mouth, and it's very slow. But there are a lot of resources out there. And so how can I be a part of the community that helps bring everybody else up, including myself with that group, to help the caregivers who are unsung heroes, to know what's available so much. There's just not much time when you're caregiving for someone to take the time to even look up and try to find resources. But if there was a spot, and I know there's a number of different things. I think you all had Tracy Lamb, did a podcast with Tracy, and there's going to be a new series, Safe and Sound series, that's going to help caregivers know what resources and products are out there, and just trying to be more a part of that network and help spread the word so that together we're better together, and we can help more that way.
So I think I heard you say this before about independence, but in addition to drawing a back and drawing someone's leg, you're really giving people their independence. I mean, that really is what this product does. And again, I'll give you a little advertisement. Again, it's really worth looking at this website and seeing this product. And it's hard to visualize it when we're talking about it, but it definitely is something people should explore if it's a need that they have. I'm curious, we talked a little bit about your marketing challenge, but I speak to lots of entrepreneurs and founders, and I love hearing their journeys and trials and tribulations, lessons learned. This has got to have been something out of a nightmare, dream. I don't know what the right word is for you, but what was maybe the highlight of this journey for you, and maybe a lesson learned?
Yeah.
Now an ad from one of our sponsors. Remember when you could trust the news? Well, then check out Walter. Walter is the free, no-nonsense newsletter for grown-ups that comes to your inbox 3 times a week. From current trends, aging in place, travel, retirement, and everything in between, including a dash of pop culture trivia and throwbacks, Walter is a great way to start your mornings and to stay informed. Oh, and did we mention that it's free? Check us out at thisiswalter.com. Get smart. Get Walter.
I would say, and this may sound too Pollyanna, but the whole journey has been a lesson. You learn, again, in everything. And I don't know that I'd go back. There certainly have been moments where I'm like, okay, I'm not sure I've got the tough skin to do this. I think about one particular time where I was doing some Facebook ads, and had one person write on there, this is a scam, don't buy this, product. And it hits hard. You're doing your best to help other people and that type of thing. And so I looked up first the name, and then I wanted to see, have they purchased a towel? And there was no purchase of the towel. And so it's like, what? It just baffles my mind that there are people who just have to, I don't know, just be negative.
There are a lot of negative.
Yeah. And that's hard for me to understand. But then it was a lesson in how do you respond? Because your immediate response is not what you want to respond with. And so that took some learning, and to that's when I realized how vulnerable I really was. When you put something out there, everybody's going to have an opinion. And so, that's where I always knew mobility towel is for some, and it's going to make a life-changing difference for some, but it's not going to work for everybody, and that's okay. And so I had to get through that mindset for that. I think the other thing, I did a Kickstarter campaign, and by all measures, it probably would have been successful, except the consulting group that I was working with, they suggested that we go with $100,000 goal, which with a Kickstarter campaign, if you don't reach your goal, you don't get anything. So we raised about $20,000, sold quite a few, I thought, but because we didn't reach the maximum. So I learned that I probably need to do a lot more research and things like that. There were frustrations with the company that I used, and learned some very expensive lessons that I wish I didn't have to learn, but learned them nonetheless. So there's definitely been some trials and tribulations along the way, but again, so far worth the journey.
So it's funny, you gave some interesting examples. You talked about that gentleman you met quite some time ago who said, I had a rotator cuff, surgery. So that would have been great. So it seems like, even though we are talking about more of the senior market, though, there are individuals that, certainly, I know my sister, when she had her rotator cuff surgery, she was probably in her early 40s, I think. I can't remember. And I know others, and those are just some examples. So do you believe, and I'm not sure, you've shared with us, but just individuals that have certain, you said open heart, certain individuals that have surgeries that may not be in the senior market, but it may be part of a target market. Because I know you talked a little bit about your target market, but I'll just delve a little bit deeper if you're willing to maybe talk a little bit more about where you see this has potential in other demographics, or where you, in your mind, you want to take it to next.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've focused on the senior market because I think that's where most people can see it. But you're absolutely right. There's no age. I have one person who has fibromyalgia who uses the towel, and her son, I think he was probably 6 or 7 years old. And she's like, this is great for him. Number one, to learn how to use it, but also I think had some different things where the weight of the towel was good for him and things like that. So really at any age, I think if you have a temporary or permanent disability that it can be used. I think one of the challenges when again, I talk about the different ailments who could the end user use it, but the purchaser is often different from the user. And so it's how do you market? Do you market to the end user? Do you market to the purchaser? And a lot of times it's the caregiver who's the one purchasing. And that's been a big challenge for me, especially, as I did some early Facebook marketing, really how do you, I know it's primarily women 35 to 64 years old, but other than that, it could be a housewife, daughter, professional, whatever. It runs the gamut. It could be anyone. And so that's been a big challenge. But I do see it in terms of target market being very, very broad. but to identify a group to target, I've started with the senior market. I think the other thing that Mobility Towel does is it allows somebody to stand depending on their ability or sit. And we know that fall risk is huge for the senior population, and that oftentimes it's a fall that is what causes their loss of independence. And I think I shared with you, Mary, before there was a study done, and I've seen a number of senior living groups quoting this, that seniors are more fearful of losing their independence than they are of dying. And so whatever we can do, again, someone's independence, there's a whole lot of ways you can lose your independence, not just your mobility, but for those that have difficulty reaching and bending and things like that, Mobility Towel really helps solve that problem.
So, Kathleen, you do a lot here, right? You have a role as an educator. You are an inventor. You are, a caregiver. You could wake up and you do so many things already. And you've answered this in different ways. But why is it that you do this important work every single day?
That's a good question. I don't know if I have a real succinct answer to that, except I would just say that's who I am. I think my life's mission, regardless whether I'm at work at the university or with the towel, is to make life easier for others. Not always removing all the barriers, because we have to have some adversity, but how can I make life easier and help people navigate for a more purposeful life? I think that's just in my nature. That's who I am and what I'm about.
I love that. And that hits. I love that quote. We may just have to name the episode that. So as we get to the top of our time with this episode, Joseph, what final thoughts and questions do you have?
I don't think I have any final thoughts or questions. I would just tell all of our listeners that, take a look at this website. It's an interesting product. I mean, it's an interesting product, a need that many of us may not realize we have until we have it, as Kathleen indicated. So definitely that's interesting. I'm been poking around the websites and I'll continue to poke.
If you have any suggestions, good, bad, or indifferent, I welcome those too.
Oh, we'll be talking later.
Thank you.
Love that. Mary, how about yourself? Thoughts and questions?
I would just say more of a thought that, Kathleen, you're a true inspiration. And I commend you for being so humble and so caring and curious, and deciding that your life is so purposeful to help others, to serve others, as you've shared with us, as you're currently doing, as I know you'll continue to do in the future. And so I don't doubt that you will continue to be successful in all aspects. And so I just think I'm just going to lift you up for a minute and just say that, because it's quite, it's not only inspiring, it's just not every day that you meet someone like yourself. No. So thanks for being such a great person and doing all the things that you do.
Thank you. You made me think of one thing I did want to share real quickly. When you talk about, I talk about my mom and the influence my mom has had, and Mobility Towel is a product that I thought because of her. But the name of my company is called K Inspired, and my mom's name was Kay. And so the whole business is set up still around her legacy and values and things of that sort. So thank you for your kind words.
That's a beautiful thing. And how can people reach out to you with thoughts, with questions, with interest? Where's the best place to find you, and how can they reach you?
So if they want to email, they can go to the website on www.mobilitytowel.com. There's a contact on there for that. But if they want to email me without going to the website, it's kinspiredllc@gmail.com. And I welcome all feedback, all questions. Would love to talk with anybody interested in Mobility Towel.
Well, that's amazing. This has been another fantastic episode, informative, inspiring, and hopefully y'all get out to the website, poke around. It is truly a unique product that solves so many things and brings independence to many. So again, Joseph, Mary, Kathleen, thank you so much for the conversation today. We will put everything mentioned in the show notes, and we welcome you back next week for another episode of the Prime Life Podcast. Thanks so much.
Remember to subscribe to the Prime Life Podcast anywhere you find podcasts. You can find all of our episodes, contact information, and more on our website, primelifepodcast.com. Stay connected with us. Follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.